A new study was just published claiming that keeping snakes in snake racks is rotting their brains. The problem is the study isn't right. There was a paper that was just put out, and there was interviews and podcasts afterwards talking about the results of the study, which was that keeping snakes in snake racks is really detrimental to their brains. Now, at face value, this might seem like, well, duh, because if you keep a snake in a snake rack, you would liken it to keeping a human in suboptimal conditions too. The problem is we personify these animals a lot of the time, and I know people don't like this comparison, but it's true. Snakes and humans aren't the same. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that snakes are these dumb, idiot creatures that don't need enrichment. They do. But is there a way that you can make a rack system good, and does the study actually touch upon that? We are going to cite from my podcast from Reptiles and Research to clear the air here. I like Liam. Liam and I are friends. I've told him about this. I even told him what the title was going to be and all the contents of the video. So this is not an attack on his credentials or to, whatever. He's a smarter guy than me. He understands this stuff. But I disagree with a lot that happened in this episode. And the guest who made all these claims because of the study that he actually ran with the 15 hognose snakes, his name is Goku, and he has a master's degree, and I don't. And also, I'm pretty sure he's like a Dragon Ball Z guy or something. In this study that Goku goes over, he explains that he takes 15 hognose snakes. All of them are babies, so they're like 3 or 4 grams, something like that. We're talking about babies. And he puts about half of them in a rack system, and he puts about half of them in an enriched environment. The enriched environment, I don't know why I'm doing this, it is enriched, is an enclosure that is a PVC enclosure. It has substrate that is either sand or coconut core, depending. It has lots of climbing opportunities. It has overhead light. I believe it also has UVB. It has hiding opportunities and is just basically a paradise for a snake in the way that us as humans would think of a paradise for a snake. The other half of the hognose snakes is in a rack system with a tub, so a shoebox size container basically, that has paper towel, 1 hide, and a water bowl, and that's it. Now, the flaw here is that most of us who keep snakes in racks, and I don't know why I say us, I don't keep snakes in racks full time. I do for quarantine and things like that. We talked about that last week. But what I'm saying is most people who keep snakes in racks as keepers rather than just breeders is the fact that we don't keep snakes in racks that are plain like that. Most people who keep snakes in racks outfit them the way that Snake Discovery would. Or a great example too would be the way that Garrett does in these focus cubed enclosures, which actually I bought for myself because I've got some arboreal snakes that are coming and they'd fit really great in these. These racks are getting lumped in with all the other racks, even though they have lighting. It's the exact same thing, except for it pulls out instead of having an opening door. So all racks are not made equal. So he's comparing the best of the absolute best to the worst of the absolute worst, where most people are going to be somewhere in the middle. The other issue I see is he's using hognose snakes, which are a diurnal animal. So they're going to need a light cycle, and the way that he put them in the bins is very limiting to how much light exposure they're going to get. So an animal that's used to the sun is going to be out during the day is going to react much differently in a rack system than something like a ball python, which is a nocturnal or crepuscular animal. So to say that all snakes react the way that a hognose would is just, And by the way, I know I'm harping and I'm like nitpicking here. I like both these guys. They're both great. I'm just pointing out the flaws and the whole idea that all racks are bad. And then I'll tell you at the end why I don't use racks, even though I'm not really defending them, but you know what I'm trying to say. So they do this for 8 months with 15 animals total. And then at the very beginning and end, they scan the brains. Here's the thing, and he even says this in the clip. I'm gonna read it to make sure that I don't get it wrong. Because so little research on snake neuroanatomy, I can't even begin to tell you what's really going on here. This is right after he boasts how much these snake brains have grown for the snakes that were in the enriched enclosures in comparison to the ones that were in the racks. But think about it. These snakes were babies when he started this, so now they're only 8 months old. They're not even at sexual maturity, never mind full physical maturity. So is it that the snakes that were in the bins or the tubs or the rack or whatever would never get to the level that these other snakes were at? Or are they just slower to develop? Think of a kid in public school, nothing wrong with public school, my kid's in a public school, versus a kid who is in a private school that costs tons and tons of money and has the best of the best. If you were to take scans of their brain at 3 years old when they go into these schools, or 4 years old, and then take scans 8 months later or a year later, now again, I'm hypothesizing here. I'm just saying that when you're in a better environment, it's likely that you're going to have a kickstart right at the very beginning. We're talking about comparing beginning of life with these hognose snakes to beginning of education. But the point is, would these snakes ever catch up? Like you see a lot of the times, people who went to public school and they outshine people who went to private school and university. They catch up. It just takes them a little while. This may be a stupid analogy, but I think you know what I'm trying to say here. I didn't go to school, okay? Give me a break. Okay, so admittedly, I might not know everything, but what I do know is if you were to buy one of these hognose snakes or any other reptile, I would do it on Palm Street app. Thanks Palm Street so much for sponsoring this video and doing so much for the reptile community. A real community on an auction asks questions as the animal is up for bid, so you know it's the right fit for you, and it's answered by the person who produced that animal or is selling it, and it's in real time before you buy. If you're somebody who really likes to know everything about what you're buying, Palm Street is the best way to buy reptiles, and it's not even close. Plus, it is a community. I did a live stream a few days ago. I gave away $600. Palm Street set it all up. They're showering the reptile community in love, and I was so proud to be a part of it. I got to interact with this community in a way that I've never been able to before, and I hear more and more about how Palm Street is the future, but it's also the right now. So if you're looking for the best community in reptiles and the best way to get a new friend for you, the answer is Palm Street. Plus, if you're looking to buy a hognose snake from me, I'll be selling all my babies on Palm Street at the end of the year. Not only that, but do we really know what we're looking at? He kind of says that we don't. What are we really measuring here? Does it really matter that they're significantly bigger, but is it really significant in comparison to what? Right? I mean, we've never really done this before. Again, I know I'm tearing it apart, but I'm so happy we're doing studies like this. And personally, I've kept hognose snakes under UVB and the whole thing. And with my own eyes, I've noticed no different than a hognose snake in a rack. This guy is way smarter than me and actually going to the trouble of scanning their freaking brains, which I think is so cool. But just because the brain grows in a way that I don't know that we can really measure if it's significant or not,
that don't impress me much.
So for that paper in itself, I think that it's cool that we did it, but 15 snakes is a really low control group. And also you're comparing the very best of the very best to the worst of the worst. Again, because we like to anthropomorphize, let's compare, say, LeBron James, who can spend $1 million on his body, versus a person who works at, I don't know, a car wash. Something where they're still on their feet all day, they're not sitting all day, you know, like they're still physically active. If you compared one to the other, are they still going to be able to do regular everyday tasks and be just as happy doing it? Probably. Is LeBron going to beat the regular guy in every metric when they're testing muscle volume and VO2 max and everything? Well, probably. The point is, sure, it's good that the brain is bigger and all that, but how much does it actually matter for the health and happiness of that animal? And then in the episode, this is unrelated to the paper, Goku there talks about how he's seen data that corn snakes who live in a enriched environment have cognitive tells or cognitive abilities that when they are then put into a rack system, they lose. He doesn't really go into what these are or how this is measured or if they've ever been put back into an environment and then they relearn them. And also, again, what abilities are we talking about here? Like my cognitive abilities have definitely declined since I've left school. I used to be in 10th grade math and I barely passed, but I knew what sine, cosine, and tan meant on a calculator back then, and I have no freaking idea what they mean now. Again, like I'm not exaggerating, I'm pretty dumb. I used to be able to graph a parabola in French, by the way, pont égale mx égale b or plus b. See, I used to know it. Now I don't, but if you put me in a classroom in 10th grade for 2 days, I bet you I could probably remember those things. So would that come back, whatever these things are, these cognitive abilities in this corn snake? I took Spanish in grade 10. I started Duolingo in January. I forgot everything from grade 10 up until January. And now I've surpassed because I've put myself in an environment where I'm learning that thing again. So same thing with corn snakes or hognose snakes or any snake whatsoever. Of course, if they don't need it, they're going to lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it, but it doesn't mean that you can't get it back. Maybe you can't, I don't know, we haven't tested it. So in short, I love that they did this. I freaking love that they did this. And all the power to you, Goku, you're the freaking man. Thank you so much for being smarter than me and paying all the money and doing all the sacrifice to go to school and have a master's degree. I don't know what the letters are behind your name. That is freaking awesome. That we're actually trying to study these animals is freaking awesome. Thanks to Liam for putting this out there because I do think there is stuff to be learned from it. I just don't want the world to go and be like, oh, there's a study and the brain gets bigger, so therefore racks are the devil. It's like, no, they're not. Racks with just paper towel and a water bowl, okay, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a good way to do things. Aside from maybe having them there like while you're waiting to ship or something, like for a very tiny period of time. But for any length of time, especially 8 months, I wouldn't do that. I know it was for a study. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just saying don't do that. But if you have a rack system, the way that say like Snake Discovery does it, or Garrett at Reach Out Reptiles does it, or the way that I'm going to do it for these mystery arboreal snakes that I haven't told you about yet, those are different. We can't paint all racks with the same brush. They're not the same thing. A rack isn't a rack is a rack. That's just not how it works. So the reason I don't keep things in racks is just because I have the room and I prefer to have things in enclosures that are displayed. I have them in this room, I have them in the other room, I have them in my living room, I have them in my office. I've got them freaking everywhere because I like to look at them. When I first started the channel, I had about the same amount of animals in a room that was a third this size because I kept things in racks, and it just wasn't fun for me. It just felt like collecting. And even though I call it a collection, and I think that the animals did great because I set up the bins the way that I learned on Snake Discovery, I don't think that it was a problem. I just, for me, didn't like the aesthetic of it. I prefer this much better. But with that said, I know not everybody can do that, and I know that breeders, to make it economical and reasonable to do, need to use racks. So I'm not vilifying racks. It's fine, just do it correctly. Don't do it bare bones the way that they did it in the study. And if they did that to prove a point, who knows? But I would love to see it done where it's, you know, a control group of very bare to a very well set up rack in comparison to a poorly set up PVC to a good PVC. Now, of course, I understand it's really difficult to do these studies. It's very expensive and time consuming. So I understand why it wasn't done that way. Totally get it. I did listen to the podcast episode where he explains it. But I'm just saying in a perfect world, it'd be really cool to compare those results. What do you think about racks versus tanks? And add some nuance here, not just this bad, this good, you know, like give me some nuance in the comment section. I really love, I'm not to be reptiliatus here, but let's engage in a dialogue in the comment section below. And for today's question of the day, will you please hit subscribe and the like button? Really appreciate it. As always, Patreon, you get videos early, discounts on merch, one-on-ones, all that and more for as little as $1 a month. It's 25 freaking degrees Celsius outside in April, so I'm going out there. I'll see you guys next week. Should we do a video about tortoises? You guys have already clicked off the video. Okay, bye.